All right, guys, welcome back. Again, my name is Scott Webb. I am with C2C Sports Investment Group, and you can follow me at Twitter at C2C Scott Webb. And today, this is going to be a team preview on the New York Yankees. So the Yankees last year they were 91 and 71. They finished second in the American League East. Boston beat them by 2 games. They won 93. However, the Yankees went a little further in the playoffs. They went to the ALCS, the American League Championship Series. They lost in 7 games to Houston, and I think most people at this point don't remember that the Yankees actually had them 2 games down. So the Yankees were very competitive, especially in a season where they weren't supposed to be. They were supposed to be 1 year away, and then Aaron Judge happened. So when Aaron Judge happened, the reality was everything changed. So that was the dynamic of one player. But it was just more than Aaron Judge. I mean, this team also found an ace pitcher in Severino. They have the best bullpen. So there's a lot of reasons why the Yankees won last year, and we'll get into some of those now. But their team batting last year, they were 27.9 WAR. Their pitching was 24.3 for a total of 52.3. This year, the batting is projected at 26.7, which is a little odd considering they picked up Giancarlo Stanton, the National League MVP, and they actually predicted to go down. And then the pitching is at 23.5, so it's supposed to be a little bit down. So they're at 50 is their WAR projection for this year. So what happened last year? So this team was ranked number 2 in offense. So again, when you start to look at handicapping baseball, I think we spend a lot of time on those pitchers, and rightfully so. And we look at a ton of different data and how all that stuff does it on individual matchups. But what separates a lot of teams is offense. And there are about 9 teams, maybe 8 teams, if you want to look at it from a perspective of teams that are actually above zero when it comes to offensive runs above average. There's only 8. One of them is the St. Louis Cardinals at 0.6, so they're basically flat to that. When you look at 8 teams being positive in offense, that pretty much gives you a huge edge on the field. And this team, the New York Yankees, finished second. They had 72.8 offensive runs above average. That equates to 7 wins just from that offensive side. They far cry from what number one is. Number one is the Houston Astros over 168, so almost 16, 17 wins for the Astros offense. So it kind of gives you the gap that the New York Yankees have to finally figure out. They were number 2 in runs scored. They batting average, they ranked 7th. So getting on base is one of the ways they got on base through base hits. They also were 3rd in walks. So if you look at 3rd in walks and 7th in average, you figure their on base average is going to be pretty good, and their weighted on base average was number 2. So they got on base, and a lot of times when you're looking at offense too, you want to look at opportunities. And when you're on base, you have opportunities. What you do with them, well, that's a different story. But when you can hit home runs and drive in runs, and like this team does, then they make most of the opportunities they get. Some teams do it through moving runners over and knocking them in. This team does it by hitting them over the fence. They didn't strike out as much as you think they did. They were 13th in the league in strikeouts, so that's slightly above average. You want to be 30th in the league in strikeouts to be the best or the fewest number of strikeouts. Being first on that list would be a bad thing. They're 13th, so they're slightly above average. So not as bad as you might thought. But home runs, number 1. They were number 1 in the league in home runs. And what's kind of interesting is their ISO number, which again is a metric measured total bases, so it has to do with doubles and triples and home runs as well. But when you're number 1 in home runs, that's a lot of total bases. You would think that you would be probably number 1 in ISO as well, but they're not. They were number 7. So that means that, they got their fair share of extra base hits, but most of their extra base hits were over the fence. And that doesn't really give you like gap to gap doubles and driving in runs that way. Like I said, they hit them over the fence, and that's how they got them done. Base running, I think, is a big deal. BSR is the standard for that. It takes away the grounding into double plays. It's the extra base running that you get when you get a base hit and you take a second base. So it's the quality of how many runs above average do you get because you're good at base running. They ranked fifth in that category, so they're very athletic. They run well. So they're not just a slow, marauding, hit a home run, strikeout team. They actually are very athletic and play well that way. What's surprising was their pitching. Their starting pitching, they ranked seventh. That's not necessarily elite, but it is good enough to get into the playoffs. And when you're in the playoffs, things can happen. But the best thing about the New York Yankees and their pitching is their relief core. Their relief core ranks number one in all of baseball. And the Cleveland Indians were a little bit close, but now that they've got a rebuilt bullpen going into 2018. The New York Yankees bullpen is by far the best bullpen. So as we go into what we're looking at for the 2018 season, it's fair to note that we should sort of look at what happened last year. This team was a team that was where Aaron Judge wasn't even considered on the team. He had to make the team. And then all of a sudden he went crazy, hits lots of home runs. He actually leads the league in WAR with 8.2, put himself into the MVP discussion. He came in second to Altuve. He did win the AL Rookie of the Year, and rightfully so. But at the same time, that quickly changed the thought of where they're going and what they're doing. But they got support too from several other all-star type performances. They got Gary Sanchez, who had a 4.41 WAR, and as a catcher, he's the best offensive player in baseball for that position. Didi Gregorius had a 3.9 WAR, just under the 4, but that's an all-star caliber season from him. Brett Gardner and Aaron Hicks both were over 3 WARs, so those are just under all-star categories. But when you think about it, that gives them 5 players in that category range. And, if you have 9 guys that normally are in a lineup and 5 of them are all-stars, and one of them's an MVP and an all-star or rookie of the year type player, you're going to have some success. And then they had the breakout season from Luis Severino. He was a 5.7 WAR. He is an ace pitcher. He throws 97 miles an hour. That's his average, 97.6. That was number 1 in all of starters last year. That could be because, and I thought of this a little while ago, is that Noah Syndergaard, he didn't make that many starts last year. So it's possible that Noah Syndergaard would outrank Severino in a normal year. But for last year, he was number 1. Masahiro Tanaka, he pitched well, 2.7 WAR. So as they kind of go through it, they actually got a really good performance from Jordan Montgomery, rookie Jordan Montgomery. He picked up a lot of the slack that might have been in that rotation. And then CC Sabathia didn't produce much WAR, but he produced a lot of wins. So then the big thing that came out of the bullpen was Chad Green. Chad Green actually led the bullpen in WAR. It was 2.3 WAR. He had a FIP of 1.75 in 67 innings. So he was just dynamite out of the bullpen. But then you had your Aroldis Chapman, your Dellin Betances, you had Adam Warren, David Robertson, Tommy Kahnle. I mean, you just can keep adding them up, and they bring in guys, and they keep the runs from happening, and gives their offense a chance, and that's what they do. It'll be interesting to see how this 2018 team does, though, because there's some significant change. One of them is Giancarlo Stanton. He is the National League MVP of last year. He comes over to join Judge, and boy, what a lineup! You're gonna end up with Judge probably batting second, and then probably have Sanchez third or something, and then you run into Stanton fourth, and then Greg Bird fifth, and you got Didi Gregorius in there too. So this is going to be murderer's row to try to get through for the New York Yankees. So one of the things that you look at when you start looking at these teams is kind of where they're going to go and what their projections look like, and are they going to be in a position where they can duplicate what they did a year ago. And the first one you really want to look at is Aaron Judge, because obviously he stepped out. It was his year. He did a lot of things well. And can he go and have an 8-WAR type season again? Well, the answer is looking at what the projections show is no. But it does show that he'll be an all-star, but it doesn't show that he's going to have that kind of year. His projection is 4.4 WAR, and that puts him in the all-star range, but not even in the MVP race, and that's really where he was last year. However, Giancarlo Stanton shows at 6.5. So you bring in a veteran guy, a guy that can have success. Maybe he gets reinvigorated being at Yankee Stadium and playing in front of a crowd instead of being in Miami playing in front of nobody. So I think that'll be an important piece. Sanchez is 3.5, so he's going to have his big normal season. And then you got your Gregorius kind of going down a little bit. Hicks going down just a little bit, but you're going to get a full year of Greg Bird this year, which you didn't have last year. And they made a deal and they got Brandon Drury to play third base, which is a key move for them because they do have two young kids, Miguel Andujar and Gleyber Torres, who they're going to play, but I don't know when. If they make the team right out of the gate, they could be dynamite, or they could be slow in trying to get developed. So it's kind of hard to see what those guys are going to do. But they have a loaded team, and the talent goes even deeper. So, I mean, if you look at their minor league system, they've got offense everywhere, but they also have great pitching coming. So when you start to look at the pitchers, what the differentiation here is with the New York Yankees is, again, the bullpen. They have the best bullpen, and it's by far the best bullpen. They're supposed to be over 7 WAR out of their bullpen, and like the second best WAR is the Houston Astros right now, and they're in the 5s. And the difference is going to be where the Red Sox come in and say a 3 in their bullpen or a 4 in their bullpen in terms of WAR. So that's the difference in how they get the games won, because Severino's going to pitch well. He's at a WAR average at 5 for his projection. Masahiro Tanaka's at a 3.6, which is better than what he did last year. Sonny Gray plays a very pivotal role because they get him for the whole year. If he can be the Sonny Gray that can actually fit a 3 spot instead of being a number 1 guy and then match up pretty well, I like his chances of having a good season. So then you're looking at Sabathia. Then you're looking at the young kid Jordan Montgomery in there as well. So they match up with just about everybody's pitchers, except for like Houston. When you start to look at what Boston does, they have possible great guys. You've got Sale, who's a number 1. We don't know what Price is going to give you. Porcello was great one year. He's not great the next. So then you're counting on guys like Pomerantz, and they don't have a 5th guy right now. So I think the Yankees are at least stable, and I think the Yankees have a lot to build upon. So I like where they stand. I like a couple of other interesting things that I'm going to tell you right now about the New York Yankees and what they did last year. They finished with 91 wins. But their sabermetric standings showed that they were the most unlucky team in the league. They should have won 16 more games based on their statistical analysis. That would have gave them 107 wins. So to validate 107 wins, you want to really look at what was their run differential, and their run differential was plus 198, which is second in the league. Only the Cleveland Indians had more. The Cleveland Indians won 102 games. The team that won the most games last year was the Dodgers. They won 104, and their run differential was lower. So I think that validates that number. 107 wins is really a more accurate, realistic number based on the talent and what they displayed last year. So now you're looking at the projections, and the projections are calling for 91 wins to 96 wins. So I think 91 wins is pretty small when you really look at what they should have done a year ago and what the talent shows. So I would look at the higher number at 96. I also think that because they brought in Giancarlo Stanton, that they might actually get a little bit better that way, so that you have a room to grow. So I look at this team, and I think to look at it from going from a realistic 107 wins last year, where do they go and drop down to this year? They play in a tough division with the Boston Red Sox. They're the tough team. They're going to play them 19 times, and they might split with those guys. But they should be able to beat up on Baltimore because Baltimore has no pitching. They should be able to beat up on the Rays because the Rays have a little bit of pitching, and they got no offense anymore. Toronto has some pitching, but their offense is pretty skeptical. So they might be able to get some wins, obviously, in those scenarios, but they're still going to have to play some of the weakest teams, the White Sox and the Royals and the Tigers and those kind of teams. And I think that 97 wins is a very good number for them, and I would put them in that category. And I think they're going to win the East. I think that Boston actually slides down a little bit from their 93 wins and finishes somewhere in the 90 win maybe type area. So I think the Yankees are going to win the division. I think they win it relatively comfortable. Where the problem runs into is they're going to have to battle the Houston Astros, and I really think the Houston Astros are the best team in the league. I think the Cleveland Indians will have the best record in the league. So there's your Cleveland or your New York Yankees analysis, and it's going to be a fun time to watch that team.